Charles told Camilla, "You will always be there," before marrying Diana. This marriage was never real. It was just a cover, a curtain to hide the Camilla affair. Before we dive into this controversial story about Charles's calculated plan, please consider subscribing to the Diana Stories and hitting the like button. Your support helps us uncover the truth behind royal deceptions. 1970, Charles, Prince of Wales, was 22 years old when he first met Camilla Charles at a polo match. The attraction was instant and mutual. Camilla was confident, funny, and didn't treat Charles like royalty. She treated him like a man. Their early relationship was passionate and genuine. Charles fell deeply in love. For the first time in his life, he felt truly understood by someone. Camilla shared his interests, laughed at his jokes, and accepted his quirks without judgment. But there was a problem. Camilla wasn't considered suitable royal marriage material. She had a dating history. She wasn't from a prestigious enough family, and most importantly, she wasn't a virgin, a requirement the royal family still insisted upon for the future queen. In 1973, Charles was sent away on naval duty. It was during this separation that Camilla married Andrew Parker Bowles, a cavalry officer and one of Charles's acquaintances. Charles was devastated when he received the news. Lord Mountbatten, Charles's great-uncle and mentor, later admitted, "We thought the separation would end the relationship. We pushed Camilla toward Andrew, thinking Charles would move on. We were wrong, because Charles never moved on." Even after Camilla's marriage, even after Charles began dating other women, the connection remained. They stayed in touch through letters, phone calls, and occasional meetings. By 1980, the pressure on Charles to marry was immense. He was 32 years old, and the monarchy needed heirs. The Queen, Prince Philip, and palace advisors were insistent Charles needed to find a suitable bride immediately. The criteria were specific and restrictive. Aristocratic background, virgin, this was still explicitly required, young enough to have multiple children, malleable enough to accept royal life without complaint, pretty enough to satisfy public expectations. Charles wasn't looking for love. He was looking for someone who fit these criteria. And in 1980, Lady Diana Spencer appeared to check every box. Diana was 19 years old, from one of Britain's most aristocratic families, beautiful, innocent, and seemingly perfect for the role of Princess of Wales. Most importantly, she clearly adored Charles and would be easy to control. But here's what Diana didn't know. Charles had already made a decision about his future, and it included Camilla. According to Jonathan Dimbleby, Charles's authorized biographer, Charles had told close friends in 1980, "I will do my duty and marry appropriately, but my heart belongs to Camilla, and that will never change." This wasn't a man struggling with conflicting emotions. This was a man making a calculated plan to have both the appropriate royal marriage and the woman he truly loved. Charles proposed to Diana in February 1981, after only 13 meetings. He barely knew her, but he knew she was young enough to be molded, naive enough to be manipulated, and infatuated enough to accept whatever situation he created. During the proposal, Diana asked Charles if he loved her. His response, whatever in love means, was chilling. This wasn't a romantic moment. This was a transaction. What Diana didn't know was that Charles had already spoken to Camilla about the marriage. According to palace insiders, Charles had reassured Camilla, "This changes nothing between us. You will always be there." The engagement period revealed the plan's early stages. While Diana was being fitted for her wedding dress and learning royal protocol, Charles was regularly speaking to Camilla on the phone. Diana discovered Charles's private phone calls by accident. She picked up an extension and heard Charles telling Camilla, "Whatever happens, I will always love you. This marriage is just what's expected of me." Diana was confused and hurt, but she was also trapped. The wedding was planned, the world was watching, and backing out would be an international scandal. She had no choice but to go forward. 2 days before the wedding, Diana found the bracelet. She was at the palace when she saw a package being wrapped for delivery. Curious, she asked what it was. A staff member, not realizing the significance, showed her a gold bracelet with 2 intertwined letters, G and F. Diana later learned these were Charles and Camilla's nicknames for each other, Gladys and Fred. Charles was sending Camilla a gift, a private message of devotion, just 2 days before marrying Diana. Diana confronted Charles. "What is this? Why are you sending gifts to another woman before our wedding?" Charles's response was cold and calculated. "Diana, you need to understand something. Camilla is my friend. She always has been, and she always will be. This marriage doesn't change that." "But you're marrying me," Diana cried. "Yes, and you'll be my wife. You'll have a title, a position, children. What more do you want?" What Diana wanted was love. What she was getting was a role in Charles's elaborate deception. Diana seriously considered calling off the wedding. She spoke to her sisters, who advised her to go through with it. "It's just cold feet," they assured her. "Every bride gets nervous." But this wasn't cold feet. This was Diana's instinct telling her something was fundamentally wrong. And she was right. The wedding went ahead on July 29th, 1981. The world watched what they thought was a fairy tale. Diana walked down the aisle of St. Paul's Cathedral, knowing that her husband-to-be was in love with another woman. During the ceremony, Charles made a significant mistake. Instead of promising to share all my worldly goods, he said, "all thy goods." Some saw it as a nervous slip. Others saw it as a Freudian revelation. Charles was keeping something back, not truly committing. What the public didn't see was Camilla watching the ceremony on television at home, knowing that nothing had really changed between her and Charles. The honeymoon on the royal yacht Britannia confirmed Diana's worst fears. Among Charles's personal effects, Diana found multiple photographs of Camilla, not old photos from years ago, but recent photos, some taken just weeks before the wedding. Charles also wore cufflinks with the G and F initials throughout the honeymoon. When Diana asked him to remove them, he refused. "These are my personal property. You don't get to dictate what I wear." The phone calls to Camilla started during the honeymoon. Charles would excuse himself after dinner and spend hours on the phone. Diana knew who he was calling. The yacht staff knew. Everyone knew, except the public, who still believed in the fairy tale. Stephen Barry, Charles's valet, later revealed, "The prince was in constant contact with Mrs. Parker Bowles. He would arrange calls at specific times when he knew the princess would be occupied. It was carefully orchestrated." The plan became clearer after Diana became pregnant with William in 1981. Charles had gotten what he needed from Diana, a legitimate heir. Now he could return more openly to Camilla. Charles began spending weekends at Highgrove House, the country estate he claimed was for privacy and farming. But Camilla was a regular visitor there. She had her own room, her own schedule, her own place in Charles's life. Diana wasn't welcome at these weekends. Charles made excuses. "You need rest because of the pregnancy. The country air might not agree with you. I need some time alone to think." He wasn't alone. He was with Camilla. The plan had multiple layers. Layer 1, the public marriage. Diana would fulfill all public duties, attend events, produce heirs, and maintain the image of a happy royal marriage. She was the public face of the relationship. Layer 2, the private relationship. Charles would maintain his true relationship with Camilla through secret meetings, phone calls, and weekends at Highgrove. This was where his heart truly belonged. Layer 3, the social circle. Charles and Camilla maintained a social circle of friends who accepted and facilitated their relationship. These friends would host hunting weekends and shooting parties where Charles and Camilla could be together openly, while Diana was excluded. Nicholas Soames, Charles's close friend, later admitted, "We all knew about Camilla. It wasn't a secret among Charles's circle. Diana was the outsider who wasn't supposed to discover the arrangement." But Diana did discover it, and she refused to accept it. In 1986, Diana found a diary entry in Charles's study. He had written about a meeting with Camilla. "Saw my darling C today. It's torture being away from her. D is becoming increasingly difficult to manage. She questions everything, suspects everything. The plan is becoming complicated." The plan was indeed becoming complicated, because Diana wasn't playing the role Charles had assigned her. She was supposed to be compliant, grateful for her position, and willing to look the other way. Instead, she was demanding her husband's fidelity and love. Charles viewed Diana's expectations as unreasonable. In his mind, he had given her everything she could want: a royal title, beautiful homes, unlimited wealth, and 2 children. What more could she possibly expect? Love. She expected love, and that was the one thing Charles had already given to Camilla. The phone call incident in 1989 exposed how organized the affair had become. A recording emerged of Charles and Camilla's intimate conversation, the infamous Camillagate tape, where Charles expressed a desire to be Camilla's tampon. This conversation wasn't a spontaneous moment of passion. It was a scheduled call, at a predetermined time, part of a regular pattern of communication. The affair was systematic, planned, and ongoing. James Gilby, Diana's friend, explained the system. Charles and Camilla had specific calling times. They used code words. They had trusted friends who would act as go-betweens. This wasn't a spontaneous affair. It was a carefully managed second relationship. Andrew Parker Bowles, Camilla's husband, was aware of the situation and had seemingly accepted it. Some suggest he had his own affairs, and the marriage had become an arrangement. This made it even easier for Charles and Camilla to continue their relationship. By 1992, the plan was unraveling. Diana had given an interview to Andrew Morton for his book, Diana, Her True Story, exposing the affair and her suffering. The public sympathy swung toward Diana. Charles was furious. Diana had broken the unspoken rule. She had exposed the plan to the world. The carefully maintained facade was crumbling. But Charles didn't end his relationship with Camilla. Instead, he became more defiant. If Diana was going to expose him, he would stop hiding. In 1994, Charles admitted to the affair in a television interview with Jonathan Dimbleby. His justification: the marriage had irretrievably broken down, both of us having tried. This was revisionist history. The marriage had been broken from the start because Charles had never intended it to be a real partnership. Diana had tried. Charles had executed a plan. The divorce in 1996 freed Charles to pursue his ultimate goal, making Camilla his official partner and eventually his wife. After Diana's death in 1997, Charles faced public backlash. Camilla was blamed for the marriage's failure and, by extension, for Diana's unhappiness. Charles had to wait, but he waited with purpose. Gradually, he rehabilitated Camilla's image. He slowly introduced her to public events. He normalized their relationship over years. In 2005, Charles married Camilla. The plan, started in 1981, was finally complete. It had taken 24 years, one failed marriage, Diana's death, and an enormous public relations effort, but Charles got what he had always wanted. Camilla became the Duchess of Cornwall, and later, when Charles became king in 2022, she became Queen Consort. The woman who had been the secret mistress was now officially recognized as Charles's partner. The plan had worked. Looking back, we can see how calculated it all was. 1981, marry appropriate bride, Diana, to satisfy royal protocol. 1982 to 83, produce heirs, William and Harry, to secure succession. 1985 to 1992, maintain secret affair with Camilla while keeping up public facade. 1992 to 1996, when exposed, shift narrative to blame Diana's instability. 1996, divorce Diana, freeing Charles legally. 1997 to 2005, rehabilitate Camilla's image after Diana's death. 2005, marry Camilla officially. 2022, make Camilla Queen Consort. Every step was calculated. Diana was never meant to be Charles's true partner. She was meant to be the mother of his heirs and the public face of respectability, while he maintained his real relationship with Camilla. Diana said it best in her Panorama interview. "There were 3 of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded." But it was worse than that. There weren't 3 people in a complicated love triangle. There were 2 people in a real relationship, Charles and Camilla, using a third person, Diana, as a cover for public acceptability. Diana wasn't a wife. She was a tool in Charles's plan to have everything he wanted: the throne, legitimate heirs, and the woman he loved. The cruelty of the plan wasn't just in Charles's deception, it was in how it was designed from the beginning. Charles knew Diana was young, innocent, and in love with him. He knew she would be hurt. He knew the marriage would fail. And he did it anyway, because his desires for Camilla, for the throne, for respectability, were more important than Diana's well-being. Today, Charles is king and Camilla is queen consort. The plan succeeded, but the cost was Diana's happiness, mental health, and ultimately, her life. History will judge whether the plan was worth it.